On a movie like Troy, it is sort of particularly difficult to achieve 70,000 people fighting in front of a city that doesn't actually exist, and to have 1,000 ships land when you only have 2 practically built.
They don't make these movies anymore. And to see, okay, we do it, and we do it well.
We try to fill the frame as much as possible with real action, with real people really fighting, and with real boats.
We can actually show 1,000 ships, and we can show armies of 75,000 soldiers. This ought to be on screen.
Wherever the limitations of the reality stop, that's where we try and take over. In the ocean so that we could figure out all of our scaling and tracking, because tracking from a moving camera on a moving platform on a moving ocean is quite complicated. But we did a lot of testing on that and created some software that enabled us to really get some great tracks from that. And then we were able to build 1,000 ships and composite those into the sequence. We had the feeling when we did that shot and we were working on it that there were too many boats in there. Everybody at the house, all of us said, this is too many. There actually aren't too many, there are under 1,000 ships in that shot. But the reality is, as I was explained to Wolfgang afterwards, is that to have 1,000 boats in that kind of a sea, it's just not possible. Even though there were 1,000 ships, they would be spread out over miles and miles of ocean. They're sailing too close to each other, they're taking each other's wind. So we went back in there and we sort of tried to persuade Wolfgang to say, let us strip 60% of them out, which we've subsequently done. And it does look a lot better. Even just having 300 or 400 ships is still, you know, looks incredible on a shot like that.
The cable cam shots were by far the most difficult, of which there's several in the film.
In sort of simplistic terms, it's putting up cranes or stanchions that can go up to several hundred feet in the air, that has a wire connected between the 2 cranes, and underneath it is slung a chassis system with a camera mounted underneath that. And that enables the camera, which is on a trolley connected to the cables above, to travel at high speeds for as long as the cables are. Basically, it started off life as a wire cam shot that Simon Crane, the second unit director, wanted to do in Malta, which was to basically chase over from the wall, come down, seeing all of the Greeks storming through the city and follow them right the way down through the set. And then we just sort of came up with this idea and said, well, if you shot it this way, we could later on, we could marry this together with a wire cam shot that we were already planning to do in Mexico, which was to follow 50,000 Greeks as they appeared through the darkness, and then maybe we could actually just tie the 2 together. So we basically devised the shot so that we had the ability to basically just split the 2 plates together. And it was very simple, just to literally eyeball the speed of it until the 2 cameras were traveling at the same speed. We knew the height of the rig, the lens, and the angle it was pointed at. It's actually quite a simple split between the 2 locations.
My first thing when I read the script was, you know, going through all these battle sequences, and they just say that there's thousands and thousands of people. And I was just thinking, how on God's earth are we going to make this look believable?
One of the biggest challenges and problems that we had to overcome was the fact that we had to create armies of 50, 70,000.
So it's not the same as all the battles we've seen come before us. So it was just trying to see how we were going to take battles one step further.
Immediately what they had to do was to write some software that would enable us to create an artificial intelligence system that could control and manage all of these soldiers. The software enabled us to basically go onto a motion capture stage and motion capture real stunt performers performing different actions. from walking to running to fighting, fighting with swords, fighting with shields, crashing into each other, running uphill, running downhill. And then the software basically is able to blend all of those motion capture clips together, and it can do it within a few frames. And therefore, your 50,000 people are always individually different from each other, because variation is the name of the game when you have 50,000 people, so that you don't end up getting repetition and replication, because unfortunately that is what the eye immediately seeks out and finds. We were also able to give each of the soldiers different values of aggression, and this enabled us to say, well, who was going to win and who was going to lose, and then you literally let the computer go and it creates what we call a simulation of the action, and the computer will select all the motion capture clips that it thinks are relevant for the next step and the next motion that that character should be doing, and it's like a sort of a virtual chess. The Battle of the Arrows was a sequence that Wolfgang wanted to start off in a very epic manner. He wanted to see the fact that we had 20,000 Trojan troops outside the walls of Troy, and then he wanted to see 50,000 Greek troops march up and square off against them. And then this great fight start while the Trojans rain down arrows and slaughter the Greeks, and then everybody retreats and runs away.
You have 50,000 Greeks attacking 25,000 Greeks, and it might have taken me 12 seconds to write that. And then you see it on screen, and it's remarkable how much work it took to do that.
We worked with Wolfgang and with the DP a lot in pre-production, using pre-visualization tools and a little virtual army software that we created that enabled us to actually march armies up together and move the camera around and find the best shots that we were able to. That also enabled us to make sure we had the right equipment out on the location.
It's exciting to create these worlds, first in computers, and then you see it more and more realized, and finally you see the final product.
Sound is often misunderstood by the general public. They assume that the material that's recorded during the production becomes the material that comprises the final soundtrack. The job of the sound editor is to sort of simulate the reality of a photograph. You're trying to present a sonic reality that may have nothing to do with anything that visually would ring true. This is a Foley stage. It's the product of 10 years of dumpster diving, garage sale hunting, and the collecting of various materials that we might use to do sound design and to create sound effects for films. In the Battle of the Barricades, we had these large hay balls that were set ablaze, and they would come rolling down the hill into the Greek camp. What we wanted to do was create a base element so that we could give some size and some weight to these hay balls. Add to them some other crunchy sounds to create the sound for the large fireballs. The sound of arrows flying through the air needed to be captured in great number, and therefore we needed a very large variety of whooshes and swooshes and flying sounds. Here's a wiffle ball bat. 4 or 5 sounds to make a single arrow flight sound. That then single arrow flight sound was composited 1,000 times in order to make a cloud of arrows appear from the walls of the city. Expressing the sound of swords was an essential element in Troy. Sword play basically comes in 2 flavors sonically. There's the clank of the metal on metal. And there's the sort of the scrape and the zing sound, as we call it, for the metal being glanced. fire, like everything else, can fool the microphone. Proximity with fire is just like proximity with any sound. The closer you get to the microphone, the larger the fire sounds. And so a small fire close to a microphone can sound like a much greater fire. The most interesting challenge in Troy was to give it this big scope and big scale, and to express that throughout the film. For Troy!